Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about junctional rhythms and AV blocks. So when we look or we think about the anatomy of the heart and we were reviewing the electrical conduction system in a normal uh, rhythm, the SA node fires, the impulse will travel through the internodal pathways causing the atria to contract. Then it goes through the AV node down to the Purkinjes. Well, what is happening? For some reason, the SA node isn't firing. So the impulse then travels and it gets down to the AV node, and then that's where the AV node is going to fire, which will cause the atria to contract. So if you were to kind of look at it, if we're looking at a normal room, and if I'm the SA node and I am firing, so I'm centering an impulse and I'm sending it this way, and it's a ball that's going across the room, we see it as a normal trajectory. But what happens when I move and now I'm firing from like the floor, and now I'm seeing something come up, and it's going to become a different direction because I'm no longer firing in one direction. Well, it's kind of what's happening in the when we're looking at a junctional rhythm. So the SA node is not firing from the top of the atrium anymore. It's firing from the AV node, which is coming from the bottom. So what we're going to really see when we talk about junctional rhythms are inverted P waves. Okay, we get into that a little bit more here. So there's different types of junctional rhythms. You have a premature junctional contraction of PJC, your junctional rhythm, accelerated junctional, and paroxysmal junctional tachycardia. So we're going to kind of run through all of these. So how do we know it's junctional? It's right there when I was talking about. So here you'll see the normal sinus. You have the P wave, has a positive flexion, and it's followed by a QRS. But when we have a junctional rhythm, again, it's coming from the AV node, and so now we're firing up from the bottom, we're going to see inverted P waves. And the inverted P waves can be before the QRS. So here we have one before the QRS, can be after the QRS, or it can be hidden someplace in the QRS. But the big thing to remember here is when we have an inverted P wave before, after, or hidden in the QRS stays the same. All right, it's normal in duration. That's the biggest thing. It's not becoming wide, it's not changing. So if we don't see a P wave and our QRS is the normal complex, normal duration, we're looking at a potential of a junctional rhythm. So first we're going to talk about a premature junctional contraction. Now this is one that we're not really going to go over a bunch, but I just want you to be aware of it. So really all that this PJC is, it's an early beat that is coming from the AV node. All right, so we will just kind of see it. So you'll see the inverted P wave. It might be before the QRS, after the QRS, or it can be hidden. And again, then our QRS complex is going to be normal. So here you just see it. It's we have an inverted P wave. So it's just an early beat that came, and we have an inverted P wave before, after, or hidden in the QRS. So I don't want you to get hung up on the PJCs. They're not really common. Sometimes you just see one, sometimes you can see two, which is a bigeminal pattern, or if you see it's every third beat, it's trigeminal. Okay, and it can kind of go in from there. Now, do we have to really be concerned with this too much? No, they really don't require any treatment at all. And if you have a whole bunch of PJCs, somebody's just going to try to figure out what the underlying cause is. But really all that you need to know is a PJC is an early beat. All right, it's an early junctional beat. And again, we know it's junctional because we have an inverted P wave before, after, or hidden in the QRS. So here we're going to start though with a junctional rhythm. So a junctional rhythm, again, it comes from the AV node. And when we look back at our electrical conduction system, the SA node had an intrinsic rate of 60 to 100, and we knew the AV node had an intrinsic rate of 40 to 60 beats. So our junctional rhythm, we're going to see a rate of 40 to 60 beats per minute. It's going to be typically regular, but again, we just have that inverted P wave before, after, or hidden in the QRS. And remember, the QRS is going to remain a normal duration. So this, again, is not very common. Sometimes you might see it after somebody's had a heart attack, but we really don't have to treat this. So we just want to remember the junctional is an inverted P wave before, after, or hidden in the QRS, and our rate is 40 to 60 beats per minute. So here's just showing you another one where the P wave is hidden in the QRS, and the QRS has a normal duration. Next, we would go into an accelerated junctional. So again, it's just an inverted P wave before, after, or during, but now our rate is going to be 60 to 100 beats per minute. So we're accelerated. So here, if you can't see, there's the P wave, the inverted P waves before the QRS. So we're just going a little bit faster. Normal junctional rhythm is 40 to 60. Normal rate for that is 40 to 60 because, again, remember the AV node is 40 to 60 beats per minute. Accelerated, we're going 60 to 100 beats. And then lastly, paroxysmal junctional tachycardia, PJT. So basically a junctional tachycardia, it's where you again have an inverted P waves before, after, or hidden in the QRS, but our rate is now over 100 beats. So you can see the inverted P waves. This one is before the QRS, okay? So just keep things very simple. Remember, any junctional rhythm is an inverted P wave before, after a QRS, or if it's hidden, and where our QRS stays normal duration. The normal intrinsic rate of the AV node is 40 to 60, so our junctional rhythm will be 40 to 60. Accelerated is 60 to 100, and tachycardia, remember, it's always over 100. So junctional tachycardia is when we have our inverted P waves and our rate is over 100. Next thing that we're going to talk about are the AV blocks. So when you have, so we're talking about the AV node, it goes into the bundle of His. There are times where the impulse can get slowed down, whether it's going through the node, through the bundle of His, and the bundle branches. And then this is going to change the duration of our P wave to our QRS, because the P wave represents the atrium, the impulse traveling through the atrium, and the QRS is the impulse traveling through our ventricles. And so we're going to see some changes when we're looking at these AV blocks. There's different classifications of the AV blocks. We have a first degree. That's where the impulses are delayed in the AV node. We have a second degree, and there's two types. There's a Mobitz 1 and a Mobitz 2. So some of the impulses are conducted to the ventricles and some are blocked. And then our third degree. So all the impulses are blocked and none are connected to conducted to the ventricles. And we're going to go over these a little bit more. When it comes to diagnosing these AV blocks, if you remember your 5 steps of rhythm interpretation, it's going to be really easy. We're going to look for P waves. Are there more than one P wave to each QRS? We're going to look at the PR interval. Is it normal or abnormal? We're going to see the regularity of the rhythm. So P waves interval, are they marching out? The R to R interval, is that marching out? And we're going to measure the QRS. Is it normal? Is it wide? So that will help us kind of determine some of these things. So let's start with the first AV block. The first degree AV block, this one, you keep things really simple. So when you're looking at this, and we would go through all of our different questions, but then we're going to look at the PR interval. And we're going to measure, is the PR interval normal or abnormal? And what you're going to see is it's going to be abnormal. It's going to be a prolonged PR interval. So a normal PR interval was 0.12 to 0.20, and this will be over the 0.20. And it's going to be consistent across the board. So it's a consistent prolonged PR interval. So you've got your P wave, your P wave, your P wave, your P wave. And so you would measure out your PR intervals all the way across, and you're going to see that it's a consistently prolonged PR interval. That's a first degree heart block. Okay. So again, look at the PR interval, consistent prolonged PR interval. That's a first degree AV block. And you have a consistent prolonged PR interval. The next we're going to go into is the second degree. Also, it's a Mobitz 1, also known as a Winky Bach. This is where the impulse gets longer and longer until it drops. So, meaning your PR interval, you can see here, you have a PR interval, and you get a little bit longer, and then you have a P wave that's not followed by a QRS complex. So that's where the impulse, when it was traveling, just dropped. It didn't make it all the way to the ventricles. So a second degree Mobitz 1, also known as a Winky Bach, is where the PR interval starts to get longer and longer until you have a P wave and it's dropped without a QRS complex. Look at it. So you have your P wave, your PR interval, and then it's a P wave where it's not followed by a QRS complex. So this is a second degree Mobitz 1. Second degree Mobitz 2. This is where you have more than one P wave for every QRS, but the PR interval stays consistent, stays the same. All right. So you can see here you have P wave, P wave. These are all P waves, but if you look at the PR interval, it's staying the same. And you can only have a PR interval when you have the QRS following it. So again, so I just want you to look at that. So you see your P waves, right? But your PR interval stays the same. So second degree Mobitz 2, you have more P waves for every QRS, but your PR interval stays the same. Example. So again, we have our P waves. There's a P wave, and you see the QRS. And P. There's actually a P hidden in the T wave, but I don't want to confuse you. So we actually have more P waves, but then we have our PR interval. And you see your PR interval, it's staying the same. So more P waves for every QRS, but our PR interval is staying the same. So just kind of quickly going back to review it again. First degree heart block was a consistent prolonged PR interval. So it was greater than normal, so greater than that 0.20 seconds, and it was consistent. Second degree Mobitz 1, it's where our PR interval got longer, longer, and longer until it dropped. And then second degree Mobitz 2, there's more P waves for every QRS, but the PR interval stays the same. And then third degree heart block is also called, the third degree is also called a complete heart block. This is where there's no relationship between the P waves and the QRS. Everybody's kind of doing their own thing. So there's no consistency. You just see here, the P waves are firing wherever, however, the QRS is kind of just doing its own thing. So there's no relationship between your P waves and your QRS. And here's just kind of breaking down your AV blocks. So the first degree, you have a consistent, prolonged PR interval. There's only one P wave to each QRS. Second degree, Mobitz 2, or Mobitz 1, sorry, your PR interval starts to get longer and longer and longer until it drops. It drops. The second degree Mobitz 1, it's also called a Winky Bach. Then we have second degree Mobitz 2. That's where you have more P waves for every QRS, but your PR interval stays the same. Okay, second degree Mobitz 2. So again, you have more P waves for every QRS, but your PR interval stays the same. And then your third degree, there is no relationship to your QRS. Everything kind of just does its own thing. P waves can be hidden, they can come before, they can come after, but there's no relationship. All right, so that's kind of a review of your junctional rhythms in the AV blocks.